I am Vinnie Tortorich, folks. Your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, just like the woman on the other mic. She's been on the show before. As a matter of fact, you might go, man, she's been on the show several times because there's more than one Dr. Unwin out there. There's David Unwin, her husband. And then there's this woman, Dr. Jen Unwin, back for, I think, her second appearance. Jen. Oh, geez. I was going to, there we go. How's it going?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Thank you for having me back. Great to chat.
Yeah, it's, you came to mind a few weeks ago because it's this time of year where I personally have to watch my P's and Q's. Right?
Yeah.
Because I've talked about on this show several times, when people say to me, man, you seem to know exactly what's going through my mind with the sugar and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah. And how do you know so much? It's like, oh, I'm not that smart. I'm you, right? Mm-hmm. I have a sugar addiction, and I talk about it on the show. And people go, you're so stoic. How do you stay away from it? I almost basically work my addiction, for the most part, like a 12-step program. I have friends who have been 12-stepping it and successfully, one for 38 years and another one for 16. So two close friends of mine who I look at what they do and go, okay, I have to look at sugar like that. And there was a long time in my life, Jen, when I didn't have to look at sugar like that because I knew I had a problem, but you see, I didn't have a weight problem. So, it's like an alcoholic goes, oh, look, I don't miss work. It's the same thing, right?
It's the same. It's exactly the same.
I don't, my family, my kids are in private school. I don't miss work. I do well. How can drinking be a problem? When I was riding a bike, I was an ultra cyclist throughout the 90s, going for 20 years, all of the 90s and some of the 2000s. It's easy to stay leaner when you're eating most of your sugar on the bike.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm not a person who puts on a lot of weight, right? It doesn't mean that my liver is going to be healthy. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to give myself type 2 diabetes at some point.
Or dementia.
Or dementia. Well, back then, we weren't even thinking in those terms. But at some point, I did give myself a mean round of cancer. And when I say I gave it to myself, I do believe we give cancer to ourselves because we damage cells. We know that now. Anyone can get cancer at any time. I know there's genetics, and I'm not getting into it, right? Oh, yeah, it can happen genetically. Your mom had this, your dad had that. Good. But we also know that you can genetically, you can damage cells, and that gives cancer the opportunity to creep in. And I personally think, and this is not medical data, Jen, that between only sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night, working like an animal, and spending between, 20 and 27 hours a week pedaling a bike, eventually that, along with a crappy diet, I was almost dead from leukemia. Right?
Yeah.
It creeps in.
It creeps in, and we get addicted to, we've got that kind of addict brain. So, like you, I'm a sugar addict, and I have to work really hard at that. Never really had a problem with alcohol, but there are other things. So there are other things behaviorally, like working too much, like getting obsessed with exercise. That's just the addict brain doing its thing. We get a bit obsessed with stuff. But once you recognize it, you can, like you say, you can start to kind of work at it, and it isn't just about the food. For those of us with a food addiction, it isn't just about the food. That's kind of the basis, isn't it? It's the beginning. We have to get that straight first. Just like the people with an alcohol or a drug problem, they have to get clean from that substance first, but then they have to keep working so that we don't slip back, so that we don't end up going back into the food, or some other behavior or some other substance, or we have to sort of just work a bit harder at life.
I want to be really clear about the 12-step thing, because I don't really 12-step it, because I've never been to a food addiction thing, because Howe and some of these food addiction places in the United States, I don't think it's fair what they're trying to do, right? They're because people do it, and then if you fall off the wagon, then it was your fault. It wasn't, So I have a problem with some of that. With 12-step alcohol or drug abuse, we don't need drugs or alcohol to sustain life, right? So all you have to do, not all you have to do, but the biggest point is you stay away from whatever the stimulant is.
Or the cigarettes or whatever it is. Yeah.
Right. Because you don't need it to sustain life, but food we need to sustain life. So boy, that becomes a taller order. I had this conversation, food addiction, I'm sorry, addiction specialist, my friend, Dr. Drew Pinsky here in the US. And he said, I said, Drew, they just figured out that, sugar lights up your brain, the frontal cortex, the same kind of reward that something like cocaine does. And Drew got all hoity-toity on it. Well, not exactly. It's not exactly. You see, cocaine does this, that, and the other thing, and sugar only does A, B, C, and D. And I said, yeah, but Drew, here's the difference. We're not giving cocaine to kids at birthday parties and telling them to treat and it's okay. It's a big difference, right, Jen? I mean, and by the way,
it's literally encouraged, isn't it? Like even for us adults, like every holiday, every celebration, you kind of, even more than alcohol, you're seen as a bit weird if you don't have it, and people are saying, oh, just have a bit, and you never would say to a person with an alcohol problem, oh, just a little bit, it's your birthday. We all know that's nonsense. So that's a big problem for those of us with this issue, because we have to be so clear. You have to be so clear with people and so clear with ourselves that we can't just have a little bit of whatever our particular drug foods are. And this argument about, well, we have to eat, we have to eat to stay alive. Well, we do, but we don't have to eat donuts to stay alive, do we? And we don't have to eat those ultra processed foods that got us in this, personally, my mess and your mess.
Right.
Yes, we have to eat food, but we don't have to eat junk. We can eat proper food as nature intended. And on the whole, although there are some exceptions, so I personally have to be a bit careful with dairy, and I have to be careful with nuts and things like that. And I know those are whole foods. So some of us have some sort of additional issues, which I think probably I never would have had if I hadn't started with the ultra processed foods and the overeating of that. But basically, we can stay away from those foods and actually be more healthy, and our brains be happier. And so in a way, I'm kind of, I don't know about you, but in a way, I'm grateful it was so bad for me, because it's really made me focus really hard on eating the right kinds of foods for my body and brain, and doing the right kinds of things to stay healthy mentally and physically. So I'm kind of grateful in a weird way that my struggles were so great. I think many people get away with eating these kinds of foods, like you've said, and they don't realize the slow damage that they're doing, or it doesn't really appear till maybe our time of life. We tend to get ill, tend to get sick sort of a bit later in life, don't we, when some of the damage has been done. So in some ways, it's been a bit of a blessing.
Look, I always say that my leukemia, I was cured by the time I was 45. I got it within that year, got rid of it. But I look at, that, I never look at cancer and people go, oh, you almost died. Do you feel like life is different? And I was like, no, cancer actually, in a weird way, gave me a better life. Not because I now live every day to the fullest, because we say that for 5 minutes and then you get into the humdrum of life and you forget about that. So that, no, not like that. But I started looking at everything. It's like, wait a minute, I've been a health and fitness guy. I have a degree in exercise physiology, nutrition. Where did I go wrong? And that's how I started my company, PureVitaminClub.com. I looked at my vitamins and was like, what's titanium dioxide and why is it in my
Yeah, what is
vitamins?
that? Yeah.
And, I got away from sugars completely. And Jen, at the time, we're talking 2007, my doctor, I had a research scientist from, she was at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles. And I said, towards the end, I said, Doc, all of my Hollywood clients and everyone's telling me I need to do a juice fast. I need to, I need to eat 20,000 vegetables a day. And I said, one person told me I need to drink upwards of 8 to 12 ounces of wheatgrass a day. And she started laughing. I said, look, anytime I have an ounce of that stuff, I burp it for the next week. It's like your stomach is not trying to get rid of it. It's just, I said, I couldn't. Yeah. And I said, I will do anything to not have this cancer come back. Will any of that help me? And she said, no, there's no science behind that. And then when I was walking to the door, she goes, because she worked with a few of my clients, my Hollywood clients, she goes, you're the no sugars, no grains guy, right? That's your deal? I said, yeah. She goes, yeah, do that. She goes, do you do that? And I said, well, kind of, but when I'm on the bike, there's a lot of dextrose because the goo and the, all the bike food, the trail mix and all this kind of stuff, the energy bars. I said, well, I do it when I'm on the bike. And she goes, sugar, we're learning now that sugar feeds cancer. And I said, well, how's that? And she goes, well, most cancers are closed cells, right? So oxygen that you take in does not really affect cancer. Well, as a matter of fact, we don't think it affects most cancers at all. But sugar has carbon and hydrogen and oxygen, and it feeds on sugar. Sugar gives cancer its energy to grow.
Yeah.
I learned that back in 2007. This is before anyone was talking about that. And she goes, you're going to start hearing about this in the next 10 or 12 years, but you might as well start now.
Yeah.
And I had to come to terms with an addiction, especially on the bike, because, exercise physiology dictates that, hey, then when your sugar runs low, you're going to bonk, right? We saw one of your great marathon runners back in the Olympics. I want to say 5 or 6 Olympics ago. She was supposed to win the gold medal in the marathon. And she bonked at mile 16 or 18 and just sat on the curb and put her head in her hands. And that was it. You run out of sugar. That was my thought pattern. You're done. Right. And that's when I learned that we could do it with ketones.
Yes.
And look, I just got off I'm pointing over here, Jim, because all my stuff is right next to me. I just got off of my rowing machine for an hour and 15 minutes right before this. Right. Yep. No sugar. Haven't had sugar yesterday, day before that. No carbohydrates. I'm in dietary ketosis and it works just as well for me. But here's the great part. And this is what I want you to speak to. My brain is better now than it was between 30 and 45 than between 45 and now 61. Why is it that I'm much clearer now, much clearer thoughts, much better sleep? Everything is better now in the past 16 years than it was for the 16 years before that. Can you explain?
Yeah, same for me. I mean, I think it's sort of well established now that the brain loves ketones too. And that if we have a lot of sugar, the inevitable effect is to have a lot of insulin. And you can get a sort of insulin resistance in the brain. And then, what happens is that the brain then can't use sugar terribly well because insulin isn't sort of allowing it into the brain where it needs to be. Insulin isn't opening the doors like it would normally because the cells are all just going, oh God, I've had enough of this insulin. So you end up without any fuel. And in the brain. And I think, you know, that's the model that they're thinking of for this sort of the model of people getting Alzheimer's, and then thinking that's kind of like diabetes type 3, and it's to do with the brain being insulin resistant if we have too much sugar. So that's one thing that can happen. I think the other thing is that our neurotransmitters generally can get in a bit of a mess with this high sugar or high processed food diet, because what happens if we have, again, high sugar, we get high insulin, and when we have high insulin, there's an amino acid called tryptophan that you'll know about, and tryptophan can more easily get into the brain when we have high insulin, and tryptophan turns into serotonin, and then we have high serotonin in the brain, which is kind of nice for a while. And it's part of the reason why we get addicted to sugar, is that serotonin is the sort of happy neurotransmitter, the relaxed neurotransmitter. It's that feeling after, you know, you've had a big meal with a giant pudding, you feel all kind of relaxed, and we get this high levels of serotonin. But like everything in the body, the brain is trying to be in homeostasis. It wants everything balanced. It doesn't want giant boosts of dopamine and serotonin, which is what we get with sugar. So it knocks out a few receptors for serotonin, knocks out a few receptors for dopamine. And dopamine is also really important neurotransmitter for motivation. And, you know, we really need that. So if you can see that if we knock out a few neurotransmitters for those things that signal to the brain, that's not great. And then we need more and more sugar to get the same effect, to get the same sort of buzz. We need more and more sugar, or more and more whatever it is, the drug food that is your particular thing. And we get in this vicious cycle of, you know, more sugar, you know, these sort of dopamine highs, serotonin highs, but more receptors being knocked out, so that our resting state becomes basically more depressed and more anxious. And the research shows that, you know, that people on these high sugar diets much more likely to suffer with mental health problems, depression, anxiety, like you say, sleep problems, and so on. So when we quit the sugar, it's hard for a while, for some of us quite some time, but, you know, at least 2 weeks people feel pretty grim, and they can feel, you know, quite depressed, quite anxious. They do get withdrawal symptoms like any other drug. But then what happens is that the brain starts balancing everything out again. It makes a few more dopamine and serotonin receptors, and you start to find more pleasure in other things, other non-food related activities can give us those boosts. And over time, you know, people are getting better. And, you know, there's more and more evidence now, isn't there, about mental health and ketogenic diets being a good thing. I've just a study released, I think in the last couple of days, a pilot study up here in Edinburgh on keto for bipolar disorder by Dr. Ian Campbell, and he's a sufferer himself. Again, like us, he's sort of got a passion for the topic because it's affected his life so severely. And they've found, you know, great people have tolerated it great. They've really improved the symptoms, reduced medication. So yeah, there's real interest now in this topic around keto for mental health. And you'll have come across, will you, the Bazooki Foundation that are funding a lot of this research now. Groups of they're funding sort of different projects on this topic. But yeah, the brain isn't very happy on high sugar for various reasons, really. So the less sugar and refined carbohydrate, no sugar, no grains that we have, the happier the brain becomes.
And I just want to, you went kind of right past it, but I read something not long ago that not only does sugar cause that, you know, dopamine hit and that reward, and every time you take in more, it takes more to get to the same reward. And as a matter of fact, you're not even scratching that itch anymore, so to speak. But
yes. like any drug, like alcohol and cocaine and all of those other things, the same.
Right. You're trying to scratch the itch and you're not getting there. So, and just like with cocaine and alcohol and everything else, and I found this very interesting that even with sugar, your inhibitions go down as you drink or as you have more sugar, which means not only are you not getting the same, you're trying to get there, but your thought patterns change to where you don't care anymore. It's kind of like, well, I've already jumped in the pool. I'm soaking wet. Who cares if it rains now? Right. It's that kind of thing. I mean, and no one talks about that side of it. Right.
So what happens is, when the reward part of the brain lights up, this sort of the sort of dopamine bit, it also inhibits the frontal lobes, which is the sort of intelligent sort of self-control willpower bit of our brains, you know, where we can sort of reason with ourselves. It's so interesting, and it seems that it goes back to survival, you know, to evolutionary principles of survival, that obviously in the autumn, if we found anything that was sweet or sort of super calorific, like nuts or honey or berries, it was a good idea if we were disinhibited and we'd go and find that stuff, whatever the risks were. We were driven really to eat as much as we could in the autumn so that we could survive the winter. So it seems like in our modern environment, what's happened is that the way that our brains are wired for survival has obviously kind of gone wrong, and it's getting us in trouble, in that when we eat these all year round, you know, kind of engineered foods that are super sweet or have these refined grains in them, the brain lights up in the reward center, which is the primitive driven part of the brain. But our intelligent kind of, I shouldn't be doing this, this is doing me no good part of the brain, yeah, you're quite right, it's kind of dampened down. So we're like David always says to me, you know, addiction really is, you can sum it up as, why do intelligent people do stupid stuff?
Right.
And you know that, yes, you know, that's right. Why did I, who kind of knew better, and didn't want to sort of engage in those behaviors of overeating sweet things, yeah, why were the brakes off? And once they were off, you know, so hard to put them back on again. And I think that's the message that I'd really want people to hear, that it's not your fault, you're not to blame, it's not a lack of willpower, it's sort of biology, if you like. It's the food which is driving you to do it. And I think if people can see it from that point of view, they can have a bit more sort of self-compassion and sort of be angry about the food and the food environment, instead of feeling ashamed of themselves. Like you and I would have been the survivors back in the day. We would have been the ones, you know, out there in the cold and the rain, trying to find these things to eat and get ourselves through the winter. We would have been really driven to do that. We would have been the survivors. We've got special brains, as Bitten Johnson says, that food addicts have very special brains, and I think that's true.
You reminded me when you used the word willpower. I have a friend, you know, the husband and wife, you know, they're friends, and we have dinner with them from time to time. And she's one of these. She doesn't eat much meat, if at all, and she's kept herself very lean, very thin. She's in her 60s now, by just eating like a bird, right? And she doesn't exercise. So she's one of these people. We all know them. They lose a lot of weight. They're very gaunt. She looks weak. She looks frail. She's not doing anything to better herself, but as long as she's thin, that's all that matters, right? And we were having dinner with them here at our house about a month ago, and this was still on her mind a day later, right? She came in, I guess she thought she was bragging to me, and she goes, because she knows what I do for a living, and she goes, we were out at this restaurant just last night, and this woman was obese. Oh my God, she was huge. And I watched her. She ate a whole plate of food. She ate everything on the plate. And would you believe this woman got the big giant piece of mile high cake or whatever she said, right? You know, some version of that. And she just said there, how could she in front of everyone else? I said, whoa, 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 whoa. Hang on. Let me explain something to you. That woman was still starving. Her brain told her that she wasn't full yet. I said, you have crazy willpower. You've spent a life not eating anything. This woman got done with that big plate of food, probably had, if you probably watched her, I told her, I said, she probably ate a tray of bread before that. And it's a good chance she ate before she left for the restaurant because she really didn't want to look like a glutton in a restaurant. I said, I work with these people every day.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit there and stare at her. She knows what her problem is, but her brain is telling her that she's starving. How can that be? She ate the big beep boop, right? And I said, you see, you're judging someone and you don't understand what their situation is. Her brain thinks that she's famished and she's starving because of what she's eating. And if she would only get coached up and get some help, then she can start changing, where she can change her lot in life and get something different done. How do you feel about that, Jen? These were my thoughts on this one. And I never met this woman. I was just by what my neighbor said.
Nobody wants to be addicted to food. Nobody chooses to be an alcoholic or, addicted to food or really, really overweight. Nobody would choose that because it's difficult and painful and shameful and all those things. So I think you're absolutely right. I think you were probably the same. I was hungry all the time when I ate like that because I couldn't burn my own fat. So when you've got high insulin, you're a sugar burner. Your body wants more sugar to burn. It can't access its own stores of energy. And like you say, all of our patients at the practice who are overweight are hungry all of the time. And one of the most common things that we hear when we coach them to go low carb keto, and they come back and they say, well, it's unbelievable that for the first time in my life, I'm not hungry all the time. I'm just sort of naturally hungry for a meal. And then, I can go 5 or 6 hours easily, which they never could go. And I was the same, I'd eat something in the car on the way to work, and about 2 hours later, I'd be starving. But that was because on the way to work, I'd eaten a banana sandwich.
Right.
So, I was just hungry. 2 hours later, I had low blood sugar. I felt weak, and then I'd eat my lunch, way too early, and then I'd be hungry again. And it was this kind of roller coaster of hunger. It's upsetting when you see people and you wish you often wish you could just go up to someone and say, I can help you. We've got the knowledge that would make a difference.
I first noticed it probably back in the 90s. I used to go over to my buddy on Sunday, and there was a few guys watching football, and they had the regular chips and dips and everything hanging around. And I would always stay away from it because I always knew if I ate one, I would have to continue eating it, right? Yeah. And I was never a beer drinker, so I never got into that. But I would watch these guys. At first, they're, one chip in the mouth, a little dip. Before long, it's 2 or 3 chips. The dip is now long gone. And before long, they're just cramming these Doritos or whatever this junk food is in their mouth.
Yes.
And then they're looking around at halftime going, what else you got? What else you got? You got something? So one day we were cleaning up and I grabbed the bag of Doritos because I'm always interested in everything. And I went, 17 ounces of corn in here. And I just watched one guy eat over 1 pound of corn. Right. And I thought about it. When he was done, he was asking what else I got. Interesting. Because if I went to a steak restaurant, had a 10-ounce steak, at the end of that steak, if they brought out another sizzling 10-ounce steak, I would have to tell them to wrap it up. I need to bring it home.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
10 ounces of steak, completely sated, over a pound of corn chips, and I'm looking for something else to eat.
Yeah.
And then I was able to, say, I have no shame. I've had a pint of ice cream and then drove out and gone and got another pint, left the house, right?
Yeah, same too.
I have a brain. Ben and Jerry's, not the two men, but their ice cream has no brain.
Mm-hmm.
And that ice cream was controlling me. That was the first time I went, something without a brain is absolutely controlling me.
Yeah.
What can I do about it? Why is it my buddy is eating a pound of corn chips and he wants another pound of corn chips? Yet when he has a steak, or if I have a steak, 10 ounces will do you.
Yeah.
12 if you're really hungry.
Yeah.
Right? What is it? And that was the beginning of it. Back in the 90s, I went, oh, because I was working with overweight people. It's like, oh, that's the clue right there. And Gary Taubes talks about it in his book. He's like, look, we can judge people walking down the street with a 64-ounce drink in their hand, 64 ounces of sugar and a bag of chips, but their brain thinks that they're emaciated and starved. Because of what we've done to the chemistry, because of what we've done by reversing everything with insulin. Can you speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. This is the thing about, well, that's not really, it's that stuff isn't food. We have to not think of it as food. We have to think of food as food, real food, like I say, meat, fish, eggs, vegetables if you want them. That's food. These manufactured, highly processed food-like items, all of which are going to raise your blood sugar. The chips, doesn't look like sugar. People often say to us, well, I don't really eat any sugar. But when you go into it, they're eating cereals, bread, rice, pasta. All of these things digest down into glucose and have exactly the same effect on your insulin. Yeah, that's then blocks your fat burning, makes you feel hungry, get this insulin high to deal with the sugar. So another wonderful fact that we always tell all our patients is, we say to them, how many teaspoons of sugar, David's obsessed with teaspoons of sugar. How many teaspoons of sugar do you think are in the human body at any one time? How much sugar does it need to kind of run on? Because we're all told we need all this sugar, like you say.
Can I have a guess? Can I have a guess?
Have a guess.
Less than 2.
Yeah, one teaspoon of sugar. If you were to drain, I was to drain your blood out and we were to look how much sugar there was. Yeah. And your liver makes that happily ticking along. It makes it at the right level that you need it for just some things in the body, like the brain to a certain extent. I think there's some cells in the eyes or something that need that bit of sugar, but your liver's happily making that out of fat and protein and happily sort of ticking away. Now, one banana, banana, healthy snack, most people would tell you, or, bowl of porridge, healthy snack. One banana, probably about 6 teaspoons of sugar. So what does your body do, unless you're actually running the marathon at the time when you're probably going to get away with that because you're kind of running it off at the time. But if I'm sitting here talking to you and I just had a banana before we came on, what's my body going to do with those 5?
Can I guess?
Yes.
Turn it into a long chain triglyceride and store it as a fat. Did I get it right? Yeah. This time I get,
yeah.
Oh, geez. Where did I learn that?
So, okay. But also your insulin. So high blood sugar really quickly damages this is all David stuff, but it really quickly damages the blood vessels. That's why we have insulin. One of its jobs, it's not the only job, but one of its jobs is to get that blood sugar down to a good level so that you're not damaging the lining of your blood vessels, basically a poison to the body. But it's not a very accurate science. So your insulin goes up, pushes the blood sugars down, pushes it into your belly fat or your liver, makes triglyceride out of it, which you don't want either. You don't want fatty liver, you don't want a fat belly, and you certainly don't want high triglycerides. But that's less immediately toxic than the actual sugar. the not exact science is that the insulin overshoots, and then that's when we get that sort of hunger. We're hungry again. So I would eat my banana sandwich on the way to work. My insulin would think, holy hell, drive down the blood sugar, store it as fat, which then I couldn't access because insulin was high. And I was hungry again because my blood sugars actually went low. And if you wear a continuous glucose monitor, you can see that happening. You know, if you eat keto, your blood sugar's like this. It's really boring wearing a CGM when you're doing keto. But if I was having my banana sandwich, my sugars would have gone up, but then down low, and I would have felt, like you said, like you're starving, like you're jittering, you're kind of sweating. You've got this kind of hypo feeling, and then we're driven to eat because your body's kind of panicking, and you get on this sort of cycle. Whereas, you know, when we keep the insulin steady and the food steady, you know, because we're just eating proper food that's low in carbohydrates naturally, we've got that steady energy, the brain's loving it, the body's loving it. We tend to get to more or less our correct weight. Let's say the body tends to sort of find its own correct weight, and everything works very nicely.
Yeah, you know, the aforementioned, and when I was talking about the British runner, Paula Radcliffe, you know, people say, why couldn't she just finish the marathon? I was like, no, you don't understand. When you bonk, your brain shuts down. That's it. You know, she couldn't go another step. She knew it, and, you know, that's it. I mean, she could have maybe limped it in, but it would have looked horrible. But, you know, it's hard to get people to understand. And you mentioned CGM, and in this country, they make it difficult to get a CGM. They tell doctors not to even hand them out unless the person is type 1 diabetic or already type 2 diabetic and been diagnosed. And then they make them difficult in price because insurance doesn't completely cover it. Some people can't cover that cost. But as I tell everyone, if you can get a blood, you know, beg, borrow, steal, you can get some doctor online. Look, we had a situation where
you can buy them online. In the UK, you can actually get a free one from Abbott, the Freestyle Libre. If you I don't know if you can do this in the States, but in the UK, if you go on their website, you can get a one free sample. And believe me, you learn a lot in 2 weeks, don't you? I don't know if you will have tried it.
Yeah, no. I tell everybody, once you know, you only need it for a couple of weeks. Once you know, you can't unknow the situation. I'm hoping that what you just said about the UK is going to happen here. But people, every time I talk about this on the podcast, as close as maybe a week or two ago, people go, no, they're still charging. My doctor won't write the prescription. Meanwhile, you know, we had doctors telling everybody on the internet, oh, you got glaucoma, get all the pot you want, right? So it's okay to get pot, but to get something that can change your life, right? They just won't do. And I really feel like it's a conspiracy right now to say, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, it's like they don't want people to know, because once you know, you can't unknow.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, it's so clear. And it's just wonderful immediate feedback. So what David does, he says, well, it's a guideline that you're not supposed to prescribe them, and I don't think he'll mind me saying he does prescribe people one CGM if they're type 2 or they've got other sort of blood sugar problems. He encourages them just to buy one. You can just buy one yourself online, and you learn an incredible amount about your own reaction to certain foods and what you can and can't get away with in terms of your own blood sugar. I think it's incredibly educational. And Nick, if you had Nick Norwitz on the podcast, he'd be a fantastic guest. And he's a real advocate.
Maybe you could get me in touch with him.
I will definitely. He's got a PhD, but he's actually at Harvard Med School at the moment. But he got all the med students there wearing CGMs so that they could learn about blood sugar. And he's fantastic.
Hang on just a second, because we're going to go right back to Harvard right after I tell everyone about the best olive oil on the planet. Villa Capelli olive oil, the longest running sponsor of the show, Villa Capelli. Folks, listen, Villa Capelli I started talking about Villicapelli before they gave me one dime to advertise their product. That's how much I love this product. Here in the good old US of A, you can cut olive oil up to 40% and still call it 100% pure olive oil. Now, UC Davis puts out an olive oil study every couple of years. It's called the UC Davis Oil Study. And they'll tell you which olive oils are 100% and which ones to stay away from. The problem is that between the time they do that, if a company gets sold to a bigger conglomerate, guess what? They're going to want to make a cheaper product. And the way they do that is get these seed oils in there, the stuff that's going to cause all the problems that Dr. Unwin's been talking about. You don't want any of that. I can guarantee that Villicapelli olive oil right out of Italy is 100% pure olive oil. And by the way, olive oil ain't cheap, but when you get it from this company, you're going to get the best price. And people go, wait a minute, 3-liter 10 is close to $100. Yes, that's going to last you for over a year. Go to some fancy cheese shop and try to buy 750 milliliters and watch what that's going to cost you. That's going to cost you $70, $80. And again, you don't know if it's pure. Don't mess around with your olive oil. Villicapelli, you want to save 10%, put in promo code Vinnie, V-I-N-N-I-E. Promo code Vinnie, V-I-N-N-I-E. Let them know over at Villicapelli that I sent you. And that's the way you want to do it. We're talking to Dr. Jen Unwin. Jen, you brought up Harvard and your friend Nick, who right after this show, you got to get me in touch with this guy. I need to talk to this guy sooner than later.
Yes.
Our friends over at the Chan School of Public Health, Walter Willett and his merry men, are at it again. All the headlines here in the States just last week, and I think I read it in some of your headlines too, over in England.
Yeah.
Eating red meat even once a week can cause type 2 diabetes. Now, as soon as I saw this, I went, oh boy, two things are going to happen. Number one, my Twitter is going to light up. And number two, Nina Teicholz is going to be on the phone. And was I right? Both things happened within an hour. So don't worry, folks. Nina's coming on next week. I know you guys love when she comes on. She always has the goods. But
you've got that covered.
Yeah. But here's the thing. I went, okay, this is obviously, before I looked at anything else, I went, this is obviously epidemiological, but let me just go see how weak it is, right? Because some epidemiology can be pretty good if you do it right, right? They took a 36, did you look it up, Jen? Do you know what I'm getting ready to say? Did you look up the study?
I know of the study. No, I didn't read it because those things just give me blood pressure problems. Well, I don't know if they literally do, but I just think, well, I'm not even going to bother reading that, because what is even the mechanism by which meat could give you diabetes? Diabetes is a carbohydrate intolerance. I mean, it just makes no sense physiologically. So whatever they found, look, I'm sure you're going to tell me it's just a it's weak, and B, it's probably because they haven't controlled for something else. I don't know what's gone on there.
Oh no, there was no control. No.
Have you come across Zoe Harcum? You must have done as well.
Oh, Zoe's been on the show. Yeah, she's been on the show several times. Yeah.
I saw she tweeted about it, and I thought, it's all right, Zoe's on Twitter.
Yeah, you see, that's what they wait for people like me and Zoe and Kendrick and all of us to come out and tell them,
Yeah, take it down.
I immediately looked it up. I went, okay, let's see how weak. When you said what they controlled for, they weren't controlling for anything, because it wasn't a double blind, so there was no control group. The group was, I want to exaggerate, but the group was almost 250,000 people. The number 216,000 people. So it's just shy of 250,000 people. It was the nurses, blah, 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 blah study. It was done over 36 years. Okay. It's getting weaker and weaker. We got 250,000 people. We have 36 years. And they asked those people what they ate once every 2 and or 4 years. And as I tell everyone, tell me what you had for lunch yesterday. And the first thing that's going to come out of their mouth is, let's see, yesterday? You know, I didn't ask you to repeat my question. I want you to blurt out what you had for lunch yesterday. Let's see, yesterday. How in hell are you going to remember 4 years ago what you had? Right? So you can extrapolate whatever you want. Go on.
People also, when they answer questionnaires, they kind of, we all sort of massage it a bit, don't we? You know, we'll say, oh, you know, better make this look a bit better than it probably was, you know. And I think there's, we just, those food frequency questionnaires are notoriously inaccurate reflections of what people actually eat.
I was told by more than one doctor over the years that when someone comes in and the doctor says, how many drinks do you have per week? If they say 3 or 4, that means 6 or 8, double. How many cigarettes do you smoke a day? If the person says between, 5 and 10, they're actually having a pack. So whatever someone tells the doctor, they write down double that because they want to have an accurate record. We always downplay what we're doing, right? So a food survey, people don't want to lie. People want to tell you what they wish they were doing. That's what they're going to tell you, what they wish they were doing, right? And that's just the way it works. You know, when I talked about on this show the other day that, Christmas is coming up and our Thanksgiving is coming up before Christmas. We have a holiday before you guys have a holiday. It's called Thanksgiving because we were giving.
Double holiday.
Yeah. It's a whole, we just wanted to show things that we got away from you guys and moved over here. And
you got some better weather. You get to sit around in t-shirts instead of polo neck jumpers.
Yeah, pretty much. By the way, I should have I'm cold down here. I was just working out. I put a dry shirt on. That's what's going on here. And I was warm.
Now you've cooled off.
Yeah, now I've cooled off. And I wish I had, as you called it, a jumper, or as we like to call it, a sweater. Sweater
weather.
But here's the thing. At Thanksgiving, I'm going to have pecan pie, right? And I know what pecan pie is going to do to me, but I have a mechanism to eat it. I drink coffee right behind it to cut that. I need to cut that off right behind it. I have my espresso machine warmed up and ready to rock and roll. I'll have 2 or 3 or 4, as many espressos as it takes to make me forget about that pecan pie that I just enjoyed. And if there's any left over, it leaves my house with whoever's here as a guest. It does not stay in my house.
That's very brave.
If that thing is in my fridge, it's going to talk to me. It's telepathy.
Yes.
I'm telling you. I have pecan pie telepathy.
I can't have it. Can't do it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Would all end badly. Yeah, it is. It's unbelievable how it does that. Yeah.
So when someone says meat study, you don't even go and look at it. You just know because look, it's like when Michael Greger, who calls himself Dr. Michael Greger, except he never did his residency. So, he's not really, I guess he's a PhD, if you want to call him. I bet you didn't know that about Greger, did you?
Didn't know that. I did not.
Yeah.
No.
I go figure out all the stuff. Greger, you see, if I put on a white lab coat with Tortorich on it and put a stethoscope around my neck and called myself Dr. Tortorich, I'm as much a doctor as Michael Greger. But nobody else knows that. He puts out books called How Not to Die. And if you go to his website, it literally says that even eating 1 egg per week can cause type 2 diabetes.
Yes, I saw.
Right? That's crazy.
Dear.
Crazy.
Crazy talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you need that stuff. The brain loves all those amino acids and all of that, and the cholesterol. Your brain's made of cholesterol. It really needs some fat. Like it's a shame. I think all of this low fat kind of the vegan thing. I can see people's motivations for doing it, but I wish they knew it wasn't good for the brain. It's not good. It's just not healthy.
Well, look, I mean, you mentioned this guy, Nick. Did you say Norvich up at Harvard?
Norvitz, yeah.
He's there. He knows what's going on. He's got people in CGMs. I think our mutual friend Georgia Eads, is she still at Harvard?
I don't think she is now, but she was there looking after the student mental health, wasn't she, for quite some time? Yeah.
Yeah. Why can't?
And her new book's coming out next year.
Oh, I can't wait.
It's going to be really good.
I love her to death. She was in my first movie, Fat, a documentary. Why can't these people meander across campus over to Walter Willard's area and go, hey guy, here's what's going on? It makes you wonder why that doesn't occur, right?
Yeah, well, I guess I don't know who's funding the Walter Willett Research Center. I can make some guesses.
Unilever, for one.
Yeah, exactly.
We know, I talk about it on the show all the time. He's taking money, he's making millions and giving people bad information. And no one's stopping this guy. This guy's killing people at this point.
Yeah, they want those companies want us to eat this stuff. They this story, don't you, that when the writing was on the wall for tobacco, that Philip Morris and all those big cigarette companies bought up the food companies so they could just carry on doing their marketing and their kind of addiction model. But in the food industry, this is Joe Niflin's written a lot about that, and they've just got us all hooked on the food now.
Yeah,
because
go on.
There was all this now there's there are public health policies around cigarettes. Certainly in the UK you can't see them, they don't get advertised, it's kind of there's treatment to get people off it, so we all know cigarettes are so terrible for us. I mean, I think I am optimistic that we'll get there. I think people will. I think it probably has to come from the ground up. I think people are starting to recognize that these ultra processed foods are addictive, are very bad for our health, and it's starting to vote with their feet. I hope so anyway. And I hope at some point that there is some more public health legislation around the labeling of them and the marketing of them, particularly to children. There was supposed to be some good new policies in the UK around advertising junk food to kids, banning it. And they've sort of rode back on that, which is really disappointing. But I think it will come, and hopefully in my lifetime. So my mission is to try and get food addiction recognized as a diagnosable condition, and and the problems with ultra processed foods recognized. And I'm hoping that in my lifetime we'll see that happen. And we've got a conference next year in London on May the 17th. We're having a big food addiction consensus conference where we're going to launch a consensus statement between as many of the researchers and clinicians who work in the space of food addiction as we can. And they're going to joint sign a statement about the nature of the problem and what we need to do about it. So we're very excited about that. And we've got to get final confirmation, but I'm pretty sure that Robert Lustig's going to come. He said he was available. Michael Moss, who wrote the fantastic book Hooked on what the food industry got up to. Vera Tarman, who wrote Food Junkies and hosts the Food Junkies podcast, she'll be coming over. Nicola Vina, who's very well known in the space for the neuroscience around food addiction. So we're really excited. And if people want to just we have got doing an Eventbrite so people can buy tickets, and we're hoping there'll be a live stream as well. But if people maybe just watch my Twitter account, they would be able to see when we launch all of the tickets and everything. So it's a Jen_Unwin on, oh, it's not Twitter anymore, is it? I still can't get used to this X business.
But people call it Twitter, but it's X. Yeah. By the way, we're going to have all of what you just said in the show notes because it's important. Look, I don't think you and I will ever see it in our lifetime because it's still rolling so hard in the wrong direction. And there's a lot of money coming, when the Bill Gateses of the world and all these people are funding the World Health Organization and they're pushing all of their agenda through. We're still going in the wrong direction, but it's these type of things that can start changing the tide. Look, I'm the only one that starts yelling about Walter Willett. Everyone else is scared. Now, look, I get shadow banned. We know this. I'm shadow banned on Instagram. And now people like me and a bunch of guys are they said it. YouTube came out and said that we're going to downgrade and not show your material to people if you're talking about red meat and all these other bad things that are bad for people. It's like, well, okay, YouTube, who decided that red meat was bad? Well, we got it right from the WHO. So they're banning us now, right? And at some point, people like myself, I get banned so much now that we're going to have to move to other platforms because they're just not putting our material out there. I was looking at my Instagram just yesterday. It was like I put something out there and it was only shown to, it was shown to 35,000 people, right? And it was shown to 35,000 of people who are already part of the 80 or 90,000, 95,000 that are already subscribed to me. They only showed it to 300 people outside of my, so everyone wanted to see this, but Instagram decided, no, we're not going to show it to anyone outside of the idiots who are following you because they consider them idiots, right? And it didn't even show it to all of them. It only showed it to, 35, 40,000, about half of them. So if people don't think this is real, what's going on, think again. Think again. And I'm glad that people like yourself and all these other doctors are coming around to combat. And I'm glad that Robert Lustig is going to be there because he's a big voice. And any big voice you can get to go, get them. Get these mouthpieces there, right? I'm trying to get my 4th documentary out by the end of the year, right? Because if, I told myself after the first documentary, I'm done. These things are too hard and too expensive to do, right? And then I did a second one. And then I said, I'm done because these things are too hard and too expensive to do. And then I did Beyond Impossible. And then I said, there is no effing way I'm ever doing this. And then here I am on the 4th one. Yeah. So, but
what's this one called, Vinnie?
I'm not putting.
What's it called, this one?
I'm not putting the title out.
Oh, no, we can't say.
As soon as the mics go cold, I'll tell you exactly what it is. As soon as I turn off the mics.
Okay.
So, Jen, before we go here, let's tell people one last time they can find you on Jen_Unwin, UNWIN.
Yes.
On X.
Yes.
Right.
On X.
And
yes.
If they want to get tickets or buy into what you guys are doing, when is it? Where is it? Give it one more time.
Okay, so it's May the 17th. It's central London. It's in a beautiful venue. It's the Royal College of General Practitioners. It's just a one-day event. But if this is you, if you have a food addiction, or if you're a healthcare professional interested, come on down. You're going to meet the best people at the moment internationally who are going to be speaking about this, and you'll be able to talk to them and get signed books and all of that. So, if you're at all interested in this topic, fly in, or if you're in the UK, you'll just hop on a train, come to London and see us. It'd be great to see everybody.
So folks, go check that out. You know what to do with us. We all go shopping on Amazon. Before you go to Amazon, go to VinnieTortorich.com, click through the banner. It puts a little coal on the fire, gets my train down the track. We also have the NSNG newsletter. The NSNG ebook is what we call it. And you can go get that at VinnieTortorich.com. You want to be signed up to my newsletter because I've been doing these 1-on-10 things, and they're very inexpensive, and everyone seems to be loving them. And the only way I'm letting people know about it is I send the newsletter out. Now, I haven't sent one out in a few weeks because when I put the first one out, we have a waiting list of several hundred people. So I'm trying to work through that list as fast as I can. I'm trying to come up with a different solution where we can have like hundreds of people and make it even easier for everyone to get in. I've been talking to the people behind me to try to figure out how that works. I haven't been able to figure it out yet, but it's coming. Where there's a will, there's a way. We're going to make this happen. So just go make sure that you're signed. Go to VinnieTortorich.com, sign up for my newsletter, if nothing else, and you will be the first to get all of the really cool information as it comes out. Okay. On behalf of Dr. Jen Unwin, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with enthusiasm.